Welcome to the deep dive. So you sent us this really interesting document all about Labor Day.
Yeah.
And, for a lot of us, it just kind of signals summer's over, right?
That's the common view, definitely.
But we thought we'd use this deep dive to dig a bit deeper, go beyond just the long weekend vibe, look at the history, the struggles, why this Monday is actually so important.
Exactly. I mean, we all love the day off, no question. But when you actually unpack the origins and how it's changed over time, it's a pretty compelling story.
About workers' rights, really.
Yes, absolutely. And how that whole journey shaped, well, everything, our society.
Okay, so let's jump back. The document paints a picture of the late 1800s in America. Big industrial growth.
Huge growth.
But it sounds like it came at a serious cost for the actual workers.
It absolutely did. Industrialization was just exploding. But the human side often got completely overlooked.
You mean like long hours?
Incredibly long hours, often 12, 14 hours a day,
Yeah.
6 days a week. And the conditions, frequently dangerous. Very little thought given to safety.
Wow.
And sadly, widespread child labor too. Kids working in factories, mines. It was brutal.
So that whole situation, the boom, but also the exploitation, that's the backdrop.
That's really the foundation, yeah. You have to understand that context to get why people started pushing for something like Labor Day.
Right. So where did the actual idea, the first spark, come from?
So the first big organized celebration we know about was September 5th, 1882, right in New York City.
Okay.
The Central Labor Union put it together. And it wasn't just a small thing. It was a big parade. Thousands of workers marching.
To show their strength.
Exactly, to show their importance, demand some recognition. And then afterwards, they had a massive public picnic. It was a real visible display of, working class solidarity.
A parade and a picnic.
Yeah.
It almost sounds kind of nice, considering what they were up against.
Well, yeah, but the act itself, that collective action, marching together like that was powerful. A statement.
I bet. But then things got, well, darker. The document mentions the Haymarket Affair, the Pullman Strike. Those sound like major turning points.
They were huge and tragic. The Haymarket Affair in Chicago, 1886. A labor rally, a bomb goes off, police fire into the crowd, people die on both sides. It really inflamed tensions.
Yeah, that sounds intense.
And then the Pullman Strike in 1894, that was nationwide. Railroad workers striking against wage cuts. It basically paralyzed the country's transportation.
Wow. Nationwide.
Yeah. And the government's response was harsh. Federal troops were sent in. It got violent. But the sheer scale of the disruption, it made everyone, including the government, realize just how central labor was and how disruptive disputes could be. It kind of forced a shift in thinking about federal intervention.
So when President Grover Cleveland signed Labor Day into law in 1894, right after Pullman, it wasn't just a nice gesture.
Oh, definitely not. It was very political, a direct response to those massive pressures, the strikes, the violence.
Trying to smooth things over.
Partly, yeah. An attempt to sort of appease labor, recognize their contribution, maybe restore a bit of stability after all that upheaval. It was a pragmatic move, born out of serious conflict.
Okay, so it has these really deep, important historical roots. But, like we said, today, for many people, it's just the unofficial end of summer. That cultural side is strong now, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It's evolved way beyond just its origins. At its heart, it's still supposed to be about honoring workers' contributions, to the country's strength and prosperity.
Right.
And it definitely symbolizes that ongoing push for solidarity, for justice in the workplace. Things like fair wages, safe conditions, the right to organize.
Collective bargaining and all that.
Exactly. But yeah, you're right. It's also become deeply tied to the calendar, that shift from summer to fall.
Yeah.
Last vacations, back to school.
Which brings its own things, right? Like the document mentions last trips to the beach, but also, let's be real, the sales.
Oh, the Labor Day sales. Definitely a modern tradition.
Yeah.
But you still see elements of the original purpose, too. Community parades, especially in towns with strong union roots. Barbecues, picnics.
Yeah.
Those are very communal.
Getting together.
Yeah. And even political rallies or speeches still happen, connecting back to that core message.
Now, something else the info highlighted, which I hadn't really connected before, was the music. Is there really, like, a Labor Day soundtrack?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Music has always been massive in social movements. And if you look at genres like folk, protest songs, even country and rock, and definitely working class blues.
Themes of work come up a lot.
Constantly. Songs about the daily grind, the struggles, the hopes of working people. They weren't just entertainment, they were tools. for building solidarity, voicing complaints, inspiring action. They became part of the movement's identity.
And the document lists some real classics, like, take this job and shove it. Pretty direct.
Yeah, can't get much more direct than that. But you also have Dolly Parton's 9 to 5, which is such a vivid picture of office life. Or Creedence Clearwater Revival's Fortunate Son, a powerful take on class and inequality.
Right. That one definitely hits hard.
Even Springsteen's Working on the Highway seems straightforward, but it touches on labor, escape, wanting something more. And Woody Guthrie's Union Maid, that's practically the anthem.
It's amazing how music can carry those messages, isn't it? And the artists mentioned Springsteen, Pete Seeger, Tracy Chapman. They really gave voice to those experiences.
They did. They used their platform to amplify working-class stories, making them relatable, making people listen.
Okay, shifting gears slightly. Food. Labor Day definitely has a taste, doesn't it? I'm thinking BBQ.
Oh, absolutely. That's probably the defining Labor Day meal, right? Hot dogs, burgers, corn on the cob, potato salad, baked beans, watermelon ice cream, lemonade,
Right.
all screams relaxed, outdoor, end-of-summer gathering.
Yeah, classic stuff. And the document also mentioned picnic foods like deviled eggs, pasta salads, more potluck-style things.
Right, which really emphasizes that communal aspect,
Yeah.
sharing food, celebrating together.
And what about those Uniontown staples? Chili, casseroles. Sounds heartier.
Yeah, that's a nod to maybe more localized, traditional celebrations in places with a deep industrial or union history, that kind of hearty, blue-collar comfort food. It shows how traditions can vary regionally, rooted in that working-class culture.
Kate, the food tells the story, too. Even plants and animals get a mention.
Yeah, it's about the time of year, really. Sunflowers, mums, they're blooming, signaling that seasonal change.
Right, fall is coming.
And crops like corn and apples are being harvested, often featured in local festivals around this time. And animals. Well, you might see horses in parades, people bring dogs to picnics, bees are still buzzing around the late summer gardens. It all just adds to this seasonal feel.
It's all part of the tapestry, I guess. Okay, let's talk about the people, the leaders. The document names Samuel Gompers, César Chávez, Mother Jones. These are big names in labor history.
Huge figures. Gompers, founding the AFL. He was instrumental in building organized labor in the U.S., really foundational.
And Chávez.
César Chávez, with the United Farm Workers, championing the rights of agricultural workers, often the most marginalized, using nonviolent methods, which was key.
But Mother Jones sounds like a force of nature.
Absolutely. A fierce advocate for minors, fighting against child labor. She was legendary, truly inspiring. Each of them tackled different aspects of the fight for workers' rights and justice.
Their legacies are still felt today, and Labor Day even pops up in pop culture, right? There's that movie, Labor Day.
Yeah, the one with Kate Winslet and Josh Brolin.
And lots of TV shows use it as a marker, end of summer, back to school episodes.
Exactly. Even if they're not directly about labor, those references cement Labor Day in our collective consciousness as this important point in the year.
Though there are things like documentaries, American Factory was mentioned, those tackle modern issues head on.
Right, which is a good reminder that these struggles aren't just history, they're ongoing.
Definitely. The info also pinpointed some key places, cities, landmarks tied to the story.
Yeah, grounding the history geographically. New York, obviously, for the first big parade. Chicago, tragically, with Haymarket, but also the Pullman Historic District, which you can still visit.
That's fascinating.
Detroit, synonymous with the auto workers unions and their power. And Washington, D.C., naturally, as the center for national rallies, lobbying, policy debates.
It helps to picture where these things happened. And like any big movement, labor has its own language slogans, catchphrases.
For sure. Mottos like, labor creates all wealth, or power to the people, that thus express core philosophies.
And union strong.
Yep, a classic rallying cry. Celebrate the worker is another common one. Even slang terms we use every day, like blue collar or talking about the grind or clocking in out, they come from that shared experience of work.
It builds identity. Okay, let's go a bit deeper. What are the core underlying ideas here? The social, economic themes.
Well, fundamentally, it asks us to think about the dignity of work itself. The idea that labor isn't just a means to an end, but has inherent value, contributes to who we are, to our communities. Yeah. That's a concept you find across philosophies, religions.
That makes sense.
And that ties directly into labor rights as human rights. The basic idea that everyone deserves fair pay, safe conditions, health care, maybe paid leave, and the right to organize, to bargain collectively. These aren't just American issues. They're seen as global human rights standards.
But the world of work is changing so fast, isn't it? Manufacturing shifts to service, now the gig economy, remote work.
That's a huge challenge right now, these massive economic shifts. They force us to ask, what even is a worker today?
Mm.
How do traditional unions represent freelancers, gig workers, people working remotely?
Yeah, it's complicated.
Very. And then you throw in automation, AI. That adds a whole other layer of uncertainty and debate about the future of work itself.
It really makes you think about how labor movements need to adapt. And the document also raises a really important point about diversity and inclusion within the movement.
Crucial. Absolutely crucial. Because history shows, frankly, that many groups, racial minorities, women, immigrants, were often exploited and excluded, sometimes even by parts of the labor movement itself in the early days.
That's tough history.
It is. But thankfully, over time, many unions started fighting for equity. You look at the role of women, from garment workers striking early on to Rosie the Riveter in WWII to the fight for $15 now, often led by women of color. Their contributions are massive.
And immigrant labor, too.
Absolutely central to American history. And today, modern movements are much more focused on including and protecting LGBTQ plus workers as well.
So the fight for fair labor is really tied up with the broader fight for equality.
Inextricably linked. You can't really separate them.
Okay, how do you explain all this to kids? Labor Day. It sounds kind of abstract for a child.
You start with things they understand. Like, you know how you have Saturday and Sunday off school and a lunch break?
Ah, connecting it to their world.
Exactly. Explain that people work together, fought for those things, help them appreciate the people who do work they see every day. Teachers, bus drivers, grocery store workers.
Making it tangible.
Yeah. Maybe make a thank a worker poster or look up a famous leader like César Chávez together. Keep it simple and relatable.
That makes sense. Now, looking outwards, how does the U.S. Labor Day compare globally? We mentioned May Day.
Right. So the U.S. and Canada celebrate in September, but most of the rest of the world celebrates International Workers' Day on May 1st.
Why the difference?
It's partly historical politics. The Haymarket Affair actually happened around May 1st, and it became a rallying point for international socialist and labor movements. The U.S. government, especially during times of anti-radical sentiment, wanted a less politically charged date, so they picked September.
Interesting. But the underlying struggles are similar elsewhere.
Oh, absolutely. You see parallel histories everywhere. The UK had the Chartist movement way back. India saw powerful trade unions develop, influenced by Gandhi. South Africa's unions, like COSATU, were vital in fighting apartheid. The core fight for workers' rights is universal, even if the dates differ.
So, similar themes, different calendars. What about right now? Modern labor movements. Are things happening?
Definitely. We're actually in a pretty active period. You see the headlines, union drives at places like Starbucks, Amazon, the big Hollywood strikes in 2023, writers and actors.
Yeah, those were major news.
And the pandemic really shook things up too. Put a spotlight on essential workers, burnout, the demand for remote work flexibility, better work-life balance. Those conversations are ongoing.
And the fight for $15.
Still going strong. Pushing for higher minimum wages, influencing policy at all levels. So yeah, labor activism is definitely visible right now.
It feels like another moment of potential change. And movements have symbols, right? What are the visuals of labor?
You have the classic ones. Tools of the trade hammers, wrenches, things that symbolize physical work.
The raised fist.
That's a huge one. The solidarity fist. Powerful symbol of unity, resistance, collective strength, used globally. And the color red, while maybe less prominent in the U.S. Labor Day context, has that strong international association with labor and socialist movements.
And powerful words, too. The quotes mentioned are really striking.
They really are. Voices that cut through. Martin Luther King Jr. connecting civil rights and labor rights, saying labor didn't weaken the nation, it strengthened it by bringing people in. That's huge.
Yeah.
Emma Goldman, if I can't dance, I don't want to be part of your revolution. A reminder that joy and dignity matter in the struggle.
I like that one.
And Frederick Douglass. Power concedes nothing without a demand. A timeless call to action, really. Still resonates today for anyone fighting for change.
They really capture the spirit. Okay, lastly, the document had some fun facts, intriguing bits. I'm curious about the no white after Labor Day thing. Where did that come from?
Yeah, that old-fashioned rule. It's kind of funny. It apparently started with the wealthier classes back after the Civil War. Wearing white was for summer resorts, summer socializing. Labor Day marked the end of that season. Time to pack away the white clothes and go back to the city. Put on darker, heavier fall clothes.
So it was a class thing.
Basically, yeah. A way for the elite to signal the changing social season. It's not really hard rule anymore, obviously, but the phrase stuck around.
Weird. What else was interesting?
Well, Canada celebrating on the same day clearly influenced by the U.S. The fact that unions were absolutely central in getting us the weekend. We often forget that.
Yeah, the 5-day work week wasn't automatic.
Not at all. Hard fought. And yeah, Labor Day being a massive travel weekend now. It's right up there with Memorial Day or Thanksgiving for hitting the road or the airport.
It's amazing, isn't it, how something that started with marches and protests for basic rights turns into this holiday with barbecues, sales, travel, and yes, even outdated fashion roles.
It really is. It shows how history evolves. But I think the key takeaway is that Labor Day is so much more than just a day off or summer's last hurrah.
Right.
It really is a commemoration of this long, often difficult, incredibly important struggle for workers' rights. A struggle that genuinely shaped the world we live in, the jobs we have, the time off we get.
Our weekends, our working conditions, a lot of that connects back.
Directly back. So maybe as we're all enjoying the long weekend, it's worth taking just a moment to reflect on that history.
Definitely. And it makes you think, too, with work changing so much, automation, remote work, everything,
Yeah.
what is the future of Labor Day going to look like?
That's the big question, isn't it? What new challenges will workers face? What new fights will need to be fought? How will we celebrate or commemorate labor in, say, 50 years?
Yeah,
Wow.
something to chew on. Thinking about the dignity of work and that ongoing push for fairness for everyone, definitely food for thought.